Guys, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to be pulling a 2JZ. It's a SC300, but this will actually be standard across the board with the IS300s, SC300s, the GS300s, the crank pulley, harmonic balancer. You can call it either or. I've always heard it called crank pulley, but it's actually a harmonic balancer. What it does actually balances the crankshaft, and it allows you to have all your belts and stuff on it, serpentine belts and whatnot, and it's actually at the front of the engine. Okay, I've already got the radiator and all that stuff off. I've already got ahead a little bit on that. The sound quality is probably not great where it's raining outside, and the shop leaked again. But what we're going to do, I'm going to show you the kit that I have. I'll give you the part number of it. Actually, I can give you the part number right now. It is Power Built is the brand, and it's kit 45 is how it's listed on the casing. And it's the box I have, it's a complete kit, so you don't have to get this whole kit, but it's the model 6. All right, so the model number is 648616. So 648616 will be the model number on the kit that I'm actually using today. Now you'll see I won't use but just a few pieces of that kit, and you'll be able to see exactly what I have to be able to pull that thing out. And that crank pulley, I'm pretty sure the bolt is, it's a 22 millimeter. It's actually, if I can get it to focus. .22 millimeter. All right, with the 22 millimeter, so you'll actually you'll have to take your radiator off. You'll have to take, you don't have to take both radiator hoses off, but I did because I'm going to look at them and make sure that where the crank pulley, the piece actually that goes around that carries the actual belt, those actually can come off, and that's what's happened here. That actually came loose. I don't know where it slung parts and pieces to. I don't know what all came out of it. I don't know what all broke or how it went, but it did sling the belt off, and it run the battery dead because you lose your power steering and your battery, your alternator. It'll drain your battery. Your water pump's also on that. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and pull that off. I've got one coming. I don't have it yet, but today I'm going to show you how you go about pulling that thing off. Like I say, I do have the radiator off, the coolant's drained, the fan shroud, the actual fan itself off the front of the water pump. I took all that off so I got room. You could probably do this on a lift or something easier from underneath, because it is lower, but I like to have plenty of room when I work on something. So you'll see me take a little excess stuff off just to where, be able to film it for you guys, and to make it easier on myself, because I try to work as simple as I can without being just covered up and not being able to turn and move, because it just sometimes it makes it harder to work than just take maybe one or two things that it's no big deal to get off, and just make it easier the whole, working on the whole thing. All right, I'll get that kit broke out and I'll show you exactly the pieces I'm going to use, and we'll actually pull it off and you'll be able to see exactly how it comes off. This is the kit we're going to be using. As you can see, it's got a bunch of different accessories and stuff, but what I'll be using will be this thing, in which it threads in here like so, and these bolts here, I think they're a 1/2 inch bolt. I'm pretty sure it's what they are, and they'll drop in like so. And what that'll do is this will actually push to the back of the crank bolt as it comes through here. These will be threaded into the pulley itself, and then as this thing goes in, you'll see it come out the bottom here. So that'll actually hit the crank pulley, or the actual crank bolt, and that will push, as that further that goes in, it pushes this further back. And so with these bolted into the crank pulley, it pulls the crank pulley off of the end of the actual crank itself. So that's what we'll be using. And you can see this is a pretty extensive kit. This thing has quite a bit of, just like the 3-jaw plier, or 3-jaw pullers, and a bunch of different accessories to make it happen. So this is a pretty good kit. And like I said, it is kit number 45. kit number 45. It's Power Built is the brand, and it's model 648616. And that's a good investment, this kit here, because it's got a lot of different pieces. It's got several of different styles or whatever. But this is a pretty good setup, so this one's worth spending the money to get. So you may want to check into that one if you're going to do a lot of cars, a lot of work on them. This is something you could probably use. All right, so what we got is on this pulley, there is actually 2 holes. So there'll be one on each side. And so you'll put these in, you find your hole. And you got to clean out, you'll probably have to clean these things out if you hadn't already. You may want to pre-thread these in before you actually drag the kit out and have it go in there, but you'll probably have to do that to find which size bolt you'll need. But these are the 1/2 inch ones, and this is the Toyota pulley, which it's a lot of your Lexus IS300s and other things. And you'll notice the crank bolt's still in it. And so what I do is I will actually use the crank bolt itself instead of, there's actually pieces that can actually go inside there in some of those kits. I don't prefer those. I actually prefer the crank bolt itself because you can leave it threaded and you'll actually push off of it. So you don't want to bring it all the way out. You want to kind of, generally rule of thumb on some of this stuff is at least 2 to 3 threads. You should be able to work off of that. So that should be plenty. And so we'll get the other one started here. All right, so get both of them started. Run your bolts in a little bit. You got some room in the back of these, so you can go in a little ways, but on these shoulder bolts you can only go so far no matter what you do. But you don't want to drive these in so far they're actually hitting the timing cover on the back, so you don't want to drive them all the way through or whatever, or break anything. So you get them in there good and snug. Like I say, 2, 3, 4 threads is plenty. But make sure you get it in far enough to when you start putting pressure on it, it don't just pull the threads out of it. All right, so now we take this jewel and we put it in the middle, and we actually thread that thing in. Until it hits the top of the crank bolt right there. So now we're on the crank bolt. All right. So again, as I turn this piece, the piece through the middle, it'll actually that'll keep trying to drive through that way. So as it does that, that will actually pull this off. It will pull it back to you. So you take your, I use a ratcheting wrench. It's 3/4, a 19 will work. And you go in, and if you'll look right here in the back of that, I don't know if you can see that in that video, it's kind of dark. But if you'll look at that, you see as it's coming out right there. So it's actually pulling the pulley off. As I'm cranking, it's pulling it backwards. You see this gap it's creating here. And it's constantly pushing off of here, so it's pulling that off the end of the crank. And these things take, I think the torque on these crank bolts are actually like 150 pounds. So they're kind of rough to get off to start with. So you got to be careful taking these crank bolts out to start with, so they can be a pain. All right, so we're bottomed out here. I'm as far as I can go because the crank bolt's actually catching now. I gotta back this thing out. And let's see if I'm far enough to take this off. And you'll have to take the crank bolt out because it won't come past the crank bolt because you have, so that's actually still holding it on. So I'll come out with it. And then we'll see if we're, all right, so we're off. And so that's what you got when it comes off. Pretty straightforward. It's a little time consuming. Actually, the hardest part about this is usually that crank bolt if you don't have a real good impact or something of that nature. That thing's pretty rough to get off. All right, on today's episode, let's see what's in the box, shall we? All right. All right, we got a couple things going on here today. All right, first, got our Lexus crank pulley. These have a rubber seal right there, and I guess it continues all the way through to the back piece, and that pulley actually breaks off. That's what's going on with the SC300. That whole piece just come completely off. So that's one thing we got. What's this? This is our water pump, timing belt, and our tensioner for our D16 weight head gasket job. I always replace the tensioner, and while you're in there, you might as well replace the water pump and the timing belt. All of it's got to be handled while you're in there. You might as well do it. All right. High performance fuel pump. Wonder what this goes on. Might as well open that too while we're at it. On this jewel, wonder what it is. All right, this, boys and girls, is the infamous Holley Red. If you've ever been into Ford and Chevrolets, any kind of V8 stuff, you'll know what a Holley Red is. Holley Red is it's really the entry level on the fuel pumps for the carbureted engines. I think it's 9 PSI or something like that. And I think 7's all you need to run a carb. So this is actually for the GMC Canyon 5.3 carb truck. This is what we're gonna actually put on that one. And so it comes with the mounting hardware and 2 handy dandy power and ground wires, and a bracket, this nice little bracket to mount it. And then you'll attach your fittings in here. We may have to hunk fittings, which I got some fittings, so. And last but not least, Rosso. What have we? An oil pump pickup. What? All right, on our GSR build, we're going to do the Rosso oil pickup. Actually, one of my favorites. It's rigid, it's solid work, and it's got the oversized pickup so you get plenty of volume on your oil. So if your engine's searching for a lot of oil, this thing is the way to go. So if you end up running a turbo motor, something with a high volume fuel pump, or oil pump rather, this is definitely the way to go. This is definitely what you need to run that high volume oil pump. A lot of people use the standard pickup. It works, but this helps a lot more. And that's what's in the box. So what you end up having is, if you can tell, this one actually looks different than the other one. Now this is the exact same style pulley, and they should look exactly the same. But what you have is on the This is one there's nothing wrong with it. This is the new one. But if you can see, there's a rubber piece right here all the way around. That's actually rubber. You can feel it with your fingernail. That's rubber, and so what that does, it absorbs some of the vibration in the engine. The alternator vibration. If there's any kind of vibration, it doesn't translate to the actual crank on the engine. And so what that leaves is a weak point in that, which you can see it actually breaks off. And when it comes off, it slings your pulley off, and then you don't have anything to run your belts. So that's something that actually does happen. And what these divots are is when they actually balance this, they spin balance it on a machine, and they actually take material out to get that exactly balanced as it should be. And then they paint it once they do that. But that's what those drill holes are. But yeah, this is a real common occurrence with the Toyotas, the 2JZs. A lot of them, just whatever the 2JZ comes out, GS300s, IS300s, the SCs, and the Toyota Supras. So this is something you'll see. If you ever run into this, this is what you're looking at. It almost sounds like a power steering belt or something, or a power steering going bad, or an alternator issue, but it ends up being this rubber bushing goes out, and so that'll still spin on that quite a bit, but it makes a crazy noise. So if you ever hear a noise that you can't find in your drive belt, you may want to pull on this a little bit and see if it's still pretty solid. But this is what gave way to allow for this, and that's why we're fixing the 2JZ on the SC300. So we got our new pulley. Alright, so the first thing you want to do is you want to find your keyway. You can see where that key lives. That's the keyway. Alright, you have to find that on the crank. So it's actually right there. And so you want to match that up. And get it started on there pretty good. Then put your bolt. Get your bolt started. Alright, so what we're actually going to do we're actually going to use this job. Yeah, there's going to be water in it. We just redid the lines. And we'll go ahead and do it. All right. And then you torque it on there, and then you're good to go. Put this thing back together. This is the water pump, and the pulley is actually detachable from there, because this is where the fan will actually go on top of here too. But what I do is I'll put the pulley on without the fan just yet. I'll go ahead and put a nut on top and a nut on bottom, just till I figure my belt out. Don't have to be tight, you're just holding it in place. All right, on your belt, there's a slick side and there's a side with the grooves. All right, you have pulleys with the groove and you have pulleys with the slick side. The slick side goes to the slick pulley. The grooves go to the groove pulleys. All right, so you'll see why I leave my pulley on there. The right size. And this is a tensioner, so this is how you actually get the belt on. So you have to push it back to get your tension. And we're going to make sure, like, see how that's riding up? That's actually where it would come off. So you make sure that you don't have any that right up like that. You want them all to be over the lip, and you want to always check them. So that should be good. Now, I can actually take these nuts off because it'll hold it in place now. For the most part, it'll still move possibly a little bit, but all right, now your fan actually bolts on here. And get these started. So you get all 4 of those on and get them tight, and then you'll have your fan on. All right, we'll set the radiator. It's got 2 little slots on the bottom, and actually where the radiator fits in. So what you'll have on the bottom is, on an automatic, you'll have 2 transmission coolant lines on the bottom and a radiator hose. Then you'll have a top radiator hose. Then the brackets on top, and then you'll slide your cover piece in, your fan shroud, once you get this in there. So. Almost. All right, there's the radiator hose, transmission lines, 1 and 2. Take your clamps, if we can get them to work, cooperate with us. And on the SC300, when you put the fan shroud in, there's actually, this piece actually comes off the bottom of the fan shroud. So you can actually do that number to get it in there. And then you have to go underneath to reinstall this piece. Then we can do the top radiator hose, and we can throw our coolant in it. All right, so we stick our top hose on. Guess I need a better pair of pliers. All right. There we go. All right. Now we need to somehow secure the fan shroud. It's definitely seen better days. All right, then we got our little brackets. That's our radiator stay, if you will. All right, overflow hose. This goes to our overflow reservoir. And our bolts here. And this will actually hold our radiator in place to keep it from going forward into our fan. 4 bolts for that thing, 2 on each side. I didn't actually video taking this off, so if this is actually what I'm tightening. So if you didn't, if you're unsure how to actually take it off, you just do this in reverse. And keep in mind, when you pull this off, you actually have to take this off the bottom to get your fan shroud off. Unless if you take the nuts off the fan first, it'll just come with it, and you can actually do it at the same time. And our fan shroud is actually broken. So we may have to figure out something on that. And I got the bad ratchet. All right. All right. And now time to fill it up. If you haven't got one of these kits yet, you should definitely check into it. So what you got is this little deal goes on in your actual radiator, and then it's got like a makeshift style cap. There's a couple of different options. This thing actually comes with several different options. All right, so that snugs that piece up. Then what you do, take this piece, it's got a handle in it, so when you get, once it gets full, you can actually replace this piece and stop your flow, and you can actually save your coolant and pour it back into something and save it, But that goes just like that. Then you add your coolant. We're gonna hope we don't have any leaks, that our radiator might have got cracked or damaged in this. So I'm not 100% sure that we're not gonna end up pulling this all back apart. So what I'll actually do is I'll buy straight antifreeze. Then I'll pour some of it out, and then I'll add in water the rest of the way. If I know I'm gonna end up using a gallon or two, I'll pour straight antifreeze, and then I'll mix it with water after I get some of it out of the jug. And the cool thing about this, like I said, if you end up pouring too much, you can always take your plug and put your plug, just to show you. You might lose a little bit. Let me set this down so I don't drop it. But you end up with, being able to save your coolant without dumping it all over the ground. So, again, after you spill it everywhere, And if you're a car guy and you haven't got this kit yet, you should definitely check into it. I'm just hoping we don't have leaks on it. And once you get your car running, you can actually just keep, because sometimes you'll have your thermostat open and it'll push water back and it may run on the ground or something. With this, you can just keep it topped off, and if it comes back a little, you're only going to get it right back into this container. And you'll be able to see what you'll have is, as the car runs, if it needs to take any water or burp any bubbles, then it just comes right back here and you don't have to worry about the coolant, going everywhere, splashing all over the place, and then this becomes the highest point. So your air bubbles should come back to here.